Okay, here's the review for the Chapter 3 test. For the first question, it says determine the slope of a line that passes through the pair of points. The equation for slope of the line is your slope equals your second y minus your first over your second x minus your first. So you should label these are both x and y. And this I'm going to use as 1, this I'm going to use as 2. So I take my second x, my second y, which is 8, minus my first, which is 3, over my second x, which is 2, minus my first, which is 5. 8 minus 3 is 5. 2 minus 5 is a negative 3. So my slope is a negative 5 over 3, or negative 5/3. Next problem. Amelia earned $40 for babysitting for 5 hours. The amount of money earned by Amelia while babysitting Y and the number of hours spent babysitting X are in a proportional linear relationship. What is the range for this situation? Since this is proportional, we just need to take our 40 and divide it by 5, which will give us how much it is per hour. So 40 divided by 5 is 8. So the answer would be $8 per hour, and that would be our unit rate, or our rate of change, which is our slope, all the same thing. It says graph this equation. So my hours are my independent variable. The money that she earns is the dependent variable. And then I'm going to go ahead and count by ones for my independent, or my x-axis. And then for my y-axis, I'm going to go ahead and count by 4s, because that's easy to do. And remember, at any time you can stop this video, so if you just need a minute to just double check and go back and regraph or something like that, you can. Now you could have counted by 2s or something different if you wanted to. It's up to you. So for 1 hour it is 8. By the way, for 0 hours it would be 0, which is telling me that this is a proportional situation also. 2 would be 16. 3 would be 24. 4 would be 32. And I really don't have to graph all of them. I could go ahead and connect them because this is proportional. It should form a straight line and go through the origin. And once I have 2 points, I really could graph the rest. So this would continue on like that. Okay, explain how the graph shows a proportional linear relationship. Well, it graphs a straight line. That goes through the origin. Which is 0, 0. Okay, interpret the unit rate and compare it to its slope. Well, we found the unit rate is $8 per hour, so we know the answer is not A or B. And the unit rate, $8 per hour, which is not the same as the slope of the graph, will be incorrect because the unit rate is the same as the slope. So D would be the correct answer there. Okay, for number 3, determine the slope of the roof of a home that rises, and it actually should say 6 feet for every horizontal change of 30 feet. It's a typo because my diagram is 6 over 30. And so I'm going to do my rise over my run. And so I'm going to do 6 over 30, which would simplify to 1/5. Now if I look at this, this is saying that it is a negative slope because it's going this way. But since we're talking about the roof of a home, I would just leave it as 1/5, because when we think about a roof of a home, I actually could be looking at it from all different kinds of perspectives. Like if I look at it, you know, from the front or the side or whatever, it's going to look a little differently. So you could put a negative 1/5 if you want, and that would still be correct, but since in a situation like this, it would be a positive, so 1/5, and that would just be the slope. For every 1 foot I go up, I run 5 feet, is basically what that's saying. Okay, going on to the next page. The points given in the table lie on a line. Determine the slope of the line. Then graph the line. So I'm just going to pick any 2 points to find the slope, and it's change in y over change in x. So my change here, I'm going up by 2, and my change here, I'm going up by 2. So it's 2 over 2, which equals 1, so my slope is 1, and it's a positive 1, so I can see right here that my answer, the only one that has a slope of 1, is A. And then I would double check and just, you know, check your points. We have -1, -2 right here. We have 1, 0 right here. 3, 2 right here. And then 5, 4 right here. And make sure that they fall on the line. If you tried some of the others, they're not going to fit on all the lines, especially on this one here. Okay, the next one, determine the slope of the line. So if I'm given a graph in 2 points, I make my right triangle, and then I do rise over run. And if there is no numbers here, we just count them by units. So this would be rising 2 units up, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units there. So it's rise over run, which would be 2/5. I'm going to look at this one over here. Again, I'm going to do my right angle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to rise 5, and I run 2. So my slope is rise 5 over run 2. And that's my slope. Now remember, these are both positive, and I would double check and ask myself, are they both positive? Yes, and make sure they're positive. If the line is going this way, then we know that it is negative. Just to double check your slope. That also, if it's multiple choice, it helps you eliminate some answer choices. Okay, next page. Number 7. Graph the pair of similar triangles, then write a proportion comparing the rise over the run, the similar slope triangles, and determine the numerical value of that slope. Okay, so I'm going to look here and I'm going to look at my points, and they're all looking pretty similar, my graph, but I'm just going to double check, and I'm going to go 1, 9 should be E, so 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so that's correct. Then I'm going to do 1, 5, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's correct, that's F. 2, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's G. 2, 5 again is G. H is 2, 1. And then I is 3, 1. So those all match. So I'm going to do my rise over my run. 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. But this is a negative slope. So this is a negative 4 over 1. So my slope should be a negative 4. Well, if I look at answer choice A, that's a positive slope. So that's not correct. This one's a negative slope, and this one's a negative slope, and this one's a negative slope. So I should check my points here just to make sure. But before I even check my points, I'm just going to go ahead and just see if these are still a rise of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It is, so it can't be 3. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, it is 4, so it can't be 5. So it's going to be C. And then just to double check that it's rise over run, we have EF, right here, EF, over FG, that's correct. Then GH over HI, again, rise over run. Okay, going on to the next one, number 8. The number of miles driven by the Hart family during their vacation is in a linear proportional relationship with the number of hours they spent traveling as shown in the graph. Determine and interpret the slope. Okay, so I'm going to look here and I see a point right here, and I can see that that rise here is from 0 to 50. So this amount here is 50. And this would be over 1 hour. So it's 50 over 1, so that means that it is 50 miles per hour. Remember to look at your scale. If it helps to put some points in a table, then do that. For example, I have 0, 0, because that's this point here. Here would be 150. Here would be 2. And 100, and remember it's change in y over change in x. And if it's proportional, it's really y divided by x, which gives you that rate of change, which is k, remember. So it'd be 50 divided by 1, which is 50, or you could do 100 divided by 2, which is also 50. Okay, obviously you wouldn't do 0 divided by 0, because that just doesn't make sense. Okay, the next one here, on the next page, the amount Ben earns, Y, varies directly with the number of hours he worked X, as shown in the graph. Write a direct variation equation, identify the constant of variation, and interpret its meaning. Okay, so I'm going to look at my points here, and I can choose any one of them. It's up to you which one you chose. But if I look here, this is probably the easiest one. It's going 5.5, which is my rise. My run is 1. So that means it's 5.5 for every 1. And since this is representing money, and this is representing hour, it's $5.50 per hour that Ben gets. And in a direct variation, my equation is y equals kx, or y equals mx, same thing, whereas your slope and k are the same in a proportional situation, and your k and your m are your unit rate. So my equation would be y equals 5.5x. Now I'm going to look at my answer choices. A says y equals 5.5x. Well, that's what I got there. But then it says 10 over 1 is my constant of variation. My constant of variation is 5.5, or 5.5 for 1. So I know it's not A, and I also know it's not B. And so the answer has to, D. The answer has to be B, because for every hour Ben works, he earns $5.50. And my equation is correct in B. It is not correct in C. Again, always look at all of your answer choices. Okay, for the next one here, the rental fee to rent jet skis varies directly as the number of hours that you rent them. Fun Vacation Rentals rents jet skis to tourists. They charge $140 for 4 hours. Suppose you rent a jet ski for only 3 hours. Write and solve a direct variation equation to determine your rental fee. So I'm going to find out how much it is per hour. So I'm going to take 140 and divide it by 4. And remember, you get to use a calculator, but that would, and so you can use a calculator, and that would be 35. And so that is my K, or my rate of change, which is 35. So my equation is going to be y equals 35x, which is what it is here and here. And now I need to apply it, and I need to know what it is for only 3 hours. So I'm going to take 35 times 3. Again, you can use your equation. But guys, since it's 3 hours, which is less than 4, makes sense that my answer is going to be less than what I paid for 4 hours. So that helps out anyway. So I already knew the answer was B because A says $420. Number 11, a runner burns 100 calories for every 15 minutes spent running. How many hours of running would it take for a runner to burn 600 calories? Now remember, these are direct variations, so you could write it as a proportion. So we have 100 calories in 15 minutes. Now I could figure out how much that is per minute, which would be 100 divided by 15, or I could just set up the proportion. 600 calories is going to be how many minutes, and then I could multiply across 600 times 15 and then divide by 100. So I'm just going to do that with my calculator. I'm going to clear this so it doesn't have so much stuff. And it's going to be 600 times 15. That's not very... I think that looks better, yeah. 600 times 15, and then divide by 100, which is going to give me 90. So my answer is 90 minutes. Now again, I could have figured out by doing 100, dividing it by 15, and getting my unit rate, which would be 20 over 3, which if I go Control Enter, it'll tell me what it is exactly. But that's not going to come out even, but I still would multiply that by 600. And oops. Something didn't go very well there. What did I do? 100 divided by 15, and then take that times, oops, keep hitting the wrong thing, times 600. That's not really working very good. 100 divided by 15. I would just set it up as a proportion. I don't know why it's not working out here, and I think it's partly because it's a repeating number, but it should still work out. 100 divided by 15 times 600. I don't know. Must be putting something in wrong. Okay, the amount of money raised by a team for a trip varies directly with the number of people who have donated. The amount of money donated by 4 people was $80. How much money would the team raise if 50 people contributed to the trip? So again, we have 80 over 4. We could find out, again, that unit rate, 80 divided by 4, which is 20, and then take 20 times 50, which is going to give you 1,000, or you could solve your proportion, which would be, if it was 80 over 4, and we want to know how much it would be for 50, we would do 80 times 50, and then divide by 4, and we get the 1,000 the same way. Like I said, I don't know why I did work above, but whatever. It works either way. Number 13, write an equation in slope-intercept form with the given slope and y-intercept. Well, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Well, if they give us the slope of 4, well, that's what m is, so I'm going to replace the 4, or the m with 4. So it's going to be y equals 4 times x. And then the y-intercept is 1, which is b plus 1. And that's my answer for that. Going on to the next page. The entrance fee to the national park is $15. A campsite fee is $15 per night. The total cost for Y for the camping trip for X nights can be represented by the equation Y equals 15X plus 15. So this is y equals mx plus b. So this is not a proportional relationship, so it's not going to go through the origin, so it cannot be a. This b, which is 15, is my y-intercept, so I need to start at 15. And that's what this one is doing. And then it increases 15 each night. Now you could figure it out by asking yourself, well, if I did 0 nights, I would still have to pay that $15 for the campsite fee. 1 night would be 1 times 15 plus 15, which is 30, so I could check 1 and 30. If I did 2 nights, it would be 2 times 15, which is 30, plus the 15, which is 45. So 2 nights would be 45, so it's looking like it matches. So remember, you can use the equation to solve and make sure that your points fall on the line. This one doesn't even make sense because this one's showing a decrease, and of course if you're paying for something in a situation like that, it's going to be an increase. And this one, C, is showing no change. So that doesn't make sense. Okay, going on to number 15, it says interpret the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, and that's for this one here. The slope represents the one-time cost of the park entrance fee. Actually, that's what the y-intercept is representing, is that one-time fee. So that isn't the correct answer. The slope and the y-intercept represent the cost per night. Actually, the slope is the cost per night because the slope is the same as your rate of change. So the slope represents the cost per night of camping, true. The y-intercept 15 represents the one-time cost of the park fee entrance. That is correct. And D, the slope and y-intercept represent the one-time cost of the park entrance fee, and that is, they're two different things. Even though they were the same number, they're still two different things. Number 16, which equation represents the relationship between the x and the y values in the table? So I'm going to look at my change in y. So my change in y here is plus 5. My change in x here, actually, that's not plus 5, that's plus 4. Plus 4, my change in y here is 16, so I have 4 over 16, which simplifies down to 1/4. Now I could have chose any other spot here to do this as well. If I went 5 to 7, that would be 2, and 20 to 8, or 20 to 28, which would be 8, and 2 over 8 is also 1/4. So my rate of change, or my slope, is 1/4. So I want the equation that has 1/4 in it, and if I apply this to make sure that I don't have a y-intercept, it should work by just multiplying. So 1/4 of 4 is 1. 1/4 of 20, or in other words, 20 divided by 4 is 5. 1/4 of 28 is 7. 48 divided by 4 is 12. 1/4 of 100 is 25. So my answer is 1/4 of x, which would be B. This one doesn't have a variable. It's telling me that y always equals 1/4, and that's not the case here. Y has a bunch of different numbers. Here it's telling me I have a y-intercept of 4, and that's not going to be it. And this one here is telling me my slope is 4, and it's not 4, it's 1/4. Remember, change in y over change in x. Okay, next page, number 17. Determine whether the relationship between the two quantities shown in the table is linear. If so, determine the constant rate of change. If not, explain your reasoning. So I'm going to see what my difference is here. And again, you can use your calculator, but you're basically going to subtract. And my difference here is 21.8 plus 21.8. But then if I go here, my difference is 25.2. Now here I'm counting by ones the whole way. So if I look here, my change in y over my change in x is not going to be the same here and here. So therefore, if it doesn't have that constant rate of change, that means I'm not adding the same amount by each amount that I'm going up here, that it's not going to be a linear relationship. So the answer is no. So it's either going to be C or D. And now I'm going to look at my different choices. And if I look at D, it says no, the rate of change is constant. Well, if the rate of change was constant, then it would be linear. So here, C, it's saying the rate of change from day 1 to day 2 is 21.8. That's what I got per day. Is not the same as the rate of fabric change from day 2 to 3, again, which is only 1 day, because that's 25.2 miles per day, so the rate of change is not constant, which makes this not linear. Okay, number 18. The graph shows the altitude of a hawk diving toward its prey. Determine whether a proportional linear relationship exists between the two quantities. Well, first of all, in order to have a proportional linear relationship, it needs to be a straight line that goes through the origin. And this one here is not going through the origin because the origin is right here. So I know it is not a proportional or direct variation, so it's not going to be my S's. So now I'm going to look at my no's, and it says the ratio of altitude to time from 3 to 6 minutes is 60 divided by 3, or 20, and 30 divided by 6, or 5. So let's actually put these points in a table. And by the way, it doesn't matter which kind of table you do. So if you want to do whichever one. So I have, this is 3 and 60. And this is 6 and 30. And again, you could do it here if you wanted to, 3 and 60, and 6 and 30. In order for you to have a direct variation, the ratio of y over x must be the same. Well, 60 divided by 3 is 20, and 30 divided by 6 is 5. So those are not the same. If they were the same, then it would be proportional. They're not the same. And so that's why the answer is A. And again, if the ratios are constant, it would be proportional. So this one here, B, doesn't even make sense. Okay, the next page here, number 19. Write an equation in slope-intercept form for the graph. Okay, so I'm going to first look at my slope. And I'm going to remind myself this is a negative slope. So even before I even write anything, I'm going to put a negative because I know it's a negative slope. 1, 2, 3 is my rise. Technically, it's a negative 3 over 1, 2, 3. So it's rise over run, so that would be 3 over 3, which is 1, or a negative 3 over 3, which is a negative 1. So that's what my slope is. My y-intercept is right here, which is a negative 3. So remember, the slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to take my negative 1 and put it in place of the m. And we don't need to put the number 1 there. We just understand that that's what that means if there is a negative there and that I only have one x. So a negative x, and then that is a negative 3, so negative x minus 3, and that's what y equals. And so that would be answer choice C. Number 20, which equation represents the relationship shown in the table? Now I could check every equation and make sure it works, because remember, your equation has to work, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and do my change in y. So a negative 8 to a negative 5 is a positive 3 over a change of x. Negative 2 to a negative 1 is a positive 1. So my slope is change in y over change in x, which means it's 3. And if I look, I see here that I have a 0 for x. If there was 0 and a 0, that means it would be proportional. But this one has a 0 and a negative 2, so the y-intercept is a negative 2. So that means my equation is y equals mx plus b. So y equals m, which is 3, so 3x plus b, but it's a negative, so we can put plus a negative 2, but it's really just a negative 2. And so that means my answer is C. Now again, what I meant before about how you can check to see if it works is you can take your equation and go 3 times a negative 2 minus 2, and it should give you a negative 8. And you can check that on your calculator. So 3 times negative 2 minus 2, and it should give us a negative 8. And then I would do the next number, which is a negative 1, and I would do 3 times a negative 1 minus 2 equals, should be a negative 5, and it is. And I could do that through the whole thing. I could do it with all of my answer choices if I wanted to. Number 21, write an equation in the slope-intercept form for the table. Again, I'm going to use change in y over change in x to find my slope. And so I'm going to go from here. So if I have 5 to a negative 1, that would be minus 6, because 5 minus 6 would be a negative 1. And then here I have a negative 4 to a negative 2, and so that would be plus 2. So I have a negative 6 over 2, which when I divide that is a negative 3. I see here that I have a y-intercept of negative 7, so that means my equation is y equals a negative 3x minus 7. Again, y equals mx plus b. So my m is negative 3, so I replace it. My b is a negative 7, so I replace it. But remember, we don't put two symbols here, and that's why we just drop the positive, and it's negative 3x minus 7. That's what y is, and so my answer is B. Okay, make sure you review your notes. The test is over Chapter 3, Sections 1 through